Around America, there are hundreds of paranormal teams investigating cases. In central Pennsylvania, there's one team known for their abilities and results, Mo Valley Paranormal. Join us now for a look into the world of hauntings and how the experts investigate the occurrences. This is Mo Valley Paranormal Live on WBLF. Now, here's Dave Shannon and Tyson Lidgett.
And welcome to our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it, otherwise known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Glad to have you along tonight.
And, of course, doing it over the telephone, going old school in this particular episode from my end. So hopefully everything sounds okay and or at least as good as can be expected.
Right.
So we're all set to go, bring you another week of discussion about paranormal investigation. The one big thing that happened between when we recorded the last week and when we're recording this week is the next lockdown was open to the public, and
yes.
Tyson, give us an update.
Surprisingly, well, you know what? After a lot of thought, not surprisingly so much, but there are spots open. About half the spots have been taken. I just think, last year we did 2 different lockdowns of the prison, 2 separate nights each time. That got a lot of people in. So we have a brand new location that I've teased coming up here in June. I think everyone's kind of holding back, waiting for that one because everyone has gone through the old Clearfield County Jail once or twice. We got some real faithful ones that if they would have gone through this one, would have been their 5th time around there. But, you never know. We could have a really cool lockdown like we did at the Bach residence, or we could have nothing. It's always a flip a coin like we always say. But there are spots available. I've said before, we'll either fill it up and we'll have a full lockdown, guest list, or we'll have a small, intimate group. But either way, it's going to be a good time for all who attend.
Absolutely. And, if you're out there and you're listening and you are one of those people that maybe have investigated at the Clearfield County Jail before and maybe you don't want to come back, I'm sure you know someone who is into paranormal investigation or wants to get into paranormal investigation. And even though, as Tyson said, there's no guarantees that there would be activity, this is a good place to go just to understand that aspect of what you see on TV from the better, investigators that are out there are the things like trying to get history, trying to understand the place you're going to. And, okay, so you can say, yeah, big deal at the jail. Bad guys stayed there.
Right.
Well, it's a little bit more than that, too. I mean, there's more that went on there. And so, for those, maybe you want to talk to somebody and just say, hey, maybe you don't think this would be cool, but, we did it before, and we suggest you give it a try. So, whether it's Facebook friends, maybe you want to reach out to them, or maybe it's just a friend of yours, or maybe someone that you email on a frequent basis that is interested in investigating the paranormal. Give them a heads up and suggest that they, come by and do the investigation at the Clearfield County Jail. It is a great place to go.
It is.
The one thing that you get smacked in the face with pretty much right off the bat, when you walk in, of course, the exterior of the building looks, very similar to what it did over the course of time.
Right.
You get inside, and, of course, the folks that are doing the mapping, they currently, control what goes on at the building. And those folks, it's a nice modern area. And then you go, okay, big deal. They got nice offices. And then you walk a little further down the hall, and you hang a right, and you're in the cells.
Yep.
And then you say, oh, this isn't anything.
Right.
This isn't close to anything that I expected.
No.
That's kind of the way it hit me. Once I hit the jail cell area, it was just like it was a wake-up call.
And what's nice about the April lockdown is there's always, it's very rainy. There's always a chance for a pop-up thunderstorm here in April in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And it just, the possibility of that, the ambient EMF being on the rise, a place like that. I mean, we've had some extremely cool experiences in there. Even with the rain, the rain raises the ambient EMF, and so we're excited to get back in there. We love investigating, and I mean, it's going to be a good time. Whether, like I said, we have a full guest list or just 20 people, it'll be a good time all around.
Is there a chance, Tyson, that at some point there will no longer be access to the Clearfield County Jail for paranormal purposes?
Absolutely, and it's I think it's coming to that point sooner than later, because the business that now resides within that building is a land mapping service, and they I just spoke to a friend of mine at work who said he was just there. It's kind of funny how it was brought up, because somebody at one of our lockdowns bought one of our auto decal stickers and put it on the mirror in the bathroom. So we are like permanently a part of the Clearfield County Jail one way or another. But but he says, hey, I saw your sticker the other day, and I always thought he was talking about a car. And I said, oh yeah, where at? And he says, the old jail. And I said, what were you doing at the old jail? And he said they were having a massive indoor yard sale selling all the stuff inside the building. So that company, I believe, is based out of Texas, and they're moving all their kind of satellite businesses back to Texas. So I would say sooner than later that will be closed off to us as an accessible site, unless, of course, the new buyer says, yeah, it's cool, we know that you come in here and do that. But if not, we will no longer have access to that site, which will be sad.
Yeah, it is a great place to investigate, and it's almost like you see these groups that are on TV and the places they get to go to, and it's like, I would venture a guess that there are probably a couple of those groups that would feel really not necessarily honored, but really excited about investigating at the Clearfield County Jail, because the age of the property, for starters, and second of all, because there is known paranormal activity at that location. So look at it that way too. Yeah,
I mean, it's our chances for getting in there are definitely dwindling. We've been this fortunate so far because the building has been for sale for about a year now. So the very fact that we got in when we did last year was lucky. And now with the reports that they had this huge indoor yard sale, tells me that they might be finalizing on something to sell that building and be moving back to Texas. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm hoping that my contact there at the jail puts in a good word for us, that maybe we'll still have access to that, whoever buys that. But as for right now, we're good. So yeah, I mean, this may be our last lockdown there at the Old Clearfield County Jail. You never know.
And the other thing too is, if there are folks out there listening, and there may be someone out there listening who would have the financial wherewithal to buy the building, that is a follower of paranormal investigation, or maybe even a fan of it, and maybe you're thinking about the idea that many have done over the course of time, and that is, when you have a place that's ripe with paranormal activity, that you buy it and then you kind of turn it into a business, and the business is paranormal groups pay you a certain amount of money to come in and investigate at that place.
Right.
Here's the big plus, Tyson. If there's someone out there that has that as an idea, you're buying a building. A lot of the times when these buildings are sold, they're in horrendous condition.
Right.
And to make them safe for people to be in is a real pain. And, if there is somebody out there that, has maybe tinkered with that idea, thought about it or whatever, it might be a good choice for you to maybe, go ahead and look into buying that building, because you're getting a building that is, been maintained very well.
Very well. Yeah.
And, it's the same kind of thing. And once you get enough of the bigger paranormal groups coming in to investigate, I'm sure you could get, continue on. It's just a thought. I just thought I'd throw that out there because.
Listen, I've fantasized many nights about being able to buy that. And what I would do, I would spend a little bit of money and buy mattresses for all of those cots, and do overnight investigations where you actually sleep and they document what goes on while you're sleeping. And I think that'd be a great place. Somebody actually had the financial ability to do something like that.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're a fan of the show and you're a fan of paranormal investigation, which if you're a fan of the show, you are, it's just an idea, tossing it out there. Somebody picks up on it, that'd be great. It'd be nice to keep it as a place to be able to investigate. And, the other one for me is I keep hoping, and somewhat selfish reasons, that at some point Tyson will buy the Reed Funeral Home.
Oh, yeah, I wish I could. Yeah, so do I.
And I say selfish because I've yet to investigate there.
My God.
I have to get there. It's a great place. And, I've heard so many stories, both from your standpoint of just straight investigations there and the lockdowns and the kind of activity you've had during the lockdown.
Right.
And when you're at a point, we've talked about this, when the spirits are familiar enough with you that they actually call you out.
Yeah.
They can address you by name when you walk in the building. That's cool. That is really cool. And Tyson has that kind of a relationship with the spirits that are there. So.
Yeah.
At any rate. Well, we're going to take a commercial time out. And those of you who are out there, listening and maybe want to take us up on any of those ideas, give you a few minutes to chew on that a little bit, and we'll come back and talk more on Mo Valley Paranormal Live. You are listening to News Talk 970 WBLF, and we'll be back right after this. And welcome back to Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of paranormal investigation, paranormal activity, all things paranormal. And we get to do it every week because we have an expert in the field. His name is Tyson. His name is Tyson Budget.
That's way too much pressure.
But and to be honest with you, Tyson, I think because of the nature of paranormal activity, I think that by the way, I'm Dave Shannon, for those of you who don't know. I think with paranormal investigation, I do think it kind of follows that with the amount of experience that you have and the type of investigating that you do, that's what gets you closer to, if somebody could say, I know a guy who's, pretty much an expert in paranormal investigation. Now, I know a lot of people, and some on TV, that have been, out there investigating for extended periods of time, and you wouldn't necessarily, because of the way they investigate, would not necessarily be what you'd call experts in paranormal investigation.
Right.
But I do think that has a lot to do with it. And once again, how many years have you been active as a paranormal investigator now?
Oh my! I'd say probably actively, maybe 13 years actively.
There you go. And that's some people that are around this might do it for 5 years, 3 years, something like that, and they walk away from it for whatever reason. But Tyson's still doing it. And the more you do it, the more situations you encounter that allow you to make more, where somebody may walk in to investigate a place for paranormal activity and give up. Tyson's been out there enough different times and used different types of equipment, and he pretty much has the gamut that he brings with him when he does a regular investigation. So you have something that you can fall back to that, so maybe we're not getting flashlight activity. Maybe the K2's not going off. Here's the PSB-7. Maybe this is where they're going to communicate. Or here's an Ovilus. Maybe that's how they want to communicate tonight. And knowing that you both have that equipment at your disposal and giving the spirits a different option as a way to communicate with you, that can mean all the difference when you're doing an investigation.
Right. I mean, I've always subscribed to this theory of, a 360-degree mentality of investigating where, you bring everything, and that way it's better to have it and not need it, and then rather than to need it and not have it. So, I mean, we have a lot of different avenues to go. Even, if all that, the gizmos and the gadgets aren't working, let's do, one for yes, two for no knocks and see what we get back. I mean, it obviously worked at the Bach residence lockdown where, we had a good, 2-minute question and answer session just by doing, the one for yes, two for no knocking method. So you never know just how and what method these energies are going to decide to communicate through.
Yeah, and it makes all the difference in the world to and there's a situation there where, excuse me, we had gone to the upstairs area there at the Bach house, and the thing about it was we weren't getting any direct communications or things that had happened before when we were downstairs. And Tyson decided, that's that experience thing. You've been out there, you've done it a bunch of times, and it's like, you know what, maybe this will work. And you started to do the knocking session. And as you say, I mean, that went 20 minutes. I mean, it was the dangest thing that I've ever seen. And the interesting thing about that was, as we're going along and more questions are being answered, the knocking, and we always talk about the amount of energy that a spirit may have. And the knocking, which is a physical thing that we can hear, the longer the conversation went on, the lighter the knocks got.
Right.
It wasn't those sharp knocks that we had at the beginning. So there's something, Tyson, just talking about that 360 degrees of, investigating. That's just a personal experience that you've picked up over the course of time, where that maybe if all the fancy and maybe not so fancy stuff that's not getting you any communications, here's one that's kind of a good fallback. It's simple.
Yeah, what was nice about that was it never happened the rest of the night. We tried to start it up again and again, and never got a response. So that session, in my mind, tells me that it was legitimate, that we actually had something communicating with us. So. Yeah,
definitely not a situation, and the length of time that it happened. As far as debunking goes, yes, every house, when you're involved in investigating, especially in the winter months, sometimes in the summer months if there's like a central air conditioning unit, but wood, by its nature, it expands and contracts.
Right.
And so you get cracking, tapping, things of that nature. But for that long of an exchange and question answer,
yeah,
you're way beyond what would be the house and the wood reacting to a temperature change.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to go that long, and I mean, the thing was, it never tapped or never knocked until I did it first. So it wasn't like it was just doing it. You know, it was, you know, I'd ask a question, and it would happen. It wasn't happening when I wasn't talking. So definitely nothing that was, you know, naturally occurring with the house settling or, you know, expansion and contraction of the wood or whatnot. So it was just one of those, you know, great experiences. It doesn't happen very often at all.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if I can draw a comparison in the short amount of investigations that I've done with you, it kind of reminded me to a degree when we did Wollaston Boggs Elementary. It was like you didn't get that K2 meter out of your hand, and it started to communicate with you immediately.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I have never seen a communication last that long with a K2 meter even.
No, I mean, and it was, like you said, automatically. I set it down, turned around, and as soon as I started walking away from it, it was reacting. So, yeah, it was very quick in response.
And, you know, it lasted for a long time. I mean, we were able to, you know, ask so many questions that, and then, you know, eventually had another spirit, or at least we felt, because when Tyson sat that down and we got the initial response, we got a real big deflection with the meter. I mean, we were up into the red on the LEDs on the K2.
Right.
And then we started to get this communication that basically stayed in the greens. So at that point, we felt that we were probably communicating with someone different at that point. And we actually changed our line of questioning at that point as well, because we felt that it was someone different. So very interesting stuff. And, of course, then we had the sound going on, which you guys ended up finding out was actually a voice that was, it just sounded like you know, they had just let class out and the hallways were filled.
Right.
And, you know, so, yeah, I mean, but that's the type of thing that when you've been around paranormal investigating a long time, you know there are other ways to go to try to get a spirit to communicate. And even with that knowledge, sometimes they still won't. So that's just the way it goes. All right, we got to take a break. We'll do that. We'll be back. More Mo Valley Paranormal Live coming up on News Talk 970 WBLS. News Talk 970 WBLS. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday evening get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
And it has come to that point in the show where we talk about the paranormal reality TV shows that are currently in operation. And apologies to those of you out there who may have heard me mention Ghost Adventures, which showed up as a new episode on my TV, and technically it's a new episode for Ghost Adventures Extra Pulses. Mm-hmm. It's not really a new investigation. It's just somebody went through and in post-production put tweets over top of the video. You know, it's and you know the thing about that is, Tyson, A, you know it's not happening live,
right?
And B, because it's that way, it is so self-serving, the tweets that they do put up on the screen, that I can't really be bothered with it. I did watch it, and there was kind of a, you know, you don't remember all of these shows because you watch so many of them, and, you know, eventually they all kind of fade into the darkness. But there were a couple of good things in that show. And the one that I thought was really hilarious was Aaron got this response on the PSB7, and Aaron goes, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
And then this voice, which actually was not on the PSB7, but just a disembodied voice, kind of made fun of Aaron and went, "Whoa!"
Right. Yeah.
I mean, from that standpoint, it was kind of funny to watch that back again. But, yeah, we won't really spend a lot of time on that episode because it's an investigation that we've already talked about on the show, so we'll skip that. And once again, apologies. It is not, if you are into watching old episodes of Ghost Adventures with self-serving tweets, go ahead and watch it.
Yeah.
So...
It's already hard enough to pay attention just to show without the tweets and add them in. It's impossible. So,
let's move on to the two that are actually still in new episodes, and we got to see the season finale of Paranormal Lockdown, and this occurred at the Chatham County Jail in Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah.
The one thing that struck me about this, Tyson. And we're going to throw just a little bit of politics into this, because that building looked like that may have been built in the 1970s, brand new, somewhere in the 70s or maybe the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, that building was pretty modern looking, and I was surprised to hear him saying they're going to be tearing it down.
Exactly. That's my point. Exactly. It's like, you have to be kidding me. I mean, obviously that means they built a new facility somewhere. And it's like, you couldn't have built on to the one that's already there. And, it kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, because, I mean, the cell doors were an electronic system. It wasn't like it was an old, like a swing gate door that, had a key to it. It looked like they were all electronic doors. So, yeah, that really kind of surprised me. They said it was going to tear it down next year. Yeah.
So, knowing all of that, what's going on at that place? Well, they do see apparitions. There are disembodied voices. They brought up one of the murderers who was held there, who had killed 6 people. And in 1989, he was housed there. Or no, I'm sorry. 1989 was when it closed. So it was probably only used for maybe 30 years,
right.
Somewhere in that area. And boy, I'll tell you, as public buildings go, that's really, well, heck, you're still there at Rockview, right?
Yeah.
Rockview was built when?
Rockview became an operation in 1915, I believe. We just had our 100th year anniversary like 2 years ago.
Okay. Whatever. It's Georgia. If that's what you folks need to do, then that's fine. One thing that I was interested, the former CO there, Colonel Rusty Smith, gave the guys a tour of the place. And this was one where I was actually kind of, I've noticed this trend by paranormal investigators, probably started a little bit by what Zach does on Ghost Adventures, and it's the I feel, whatever, in the blank.
Yeah.
I feel sick, I feel this, I feel that. And I thought it was kind of a little bit of a comeuppance when Colonel Smith was taking them on the tour, and they're down on the first floor, and Katrina steps in to a cell and says, oh my, I just feel I'm so sick. Have you had other people get sick in here? And he just kind of turned and looked at her and said, nope, never heard anything about this particular spot. And it was like that was the last we heard about feeling ill on the first floor.
Yeah, I think she said last season that she's kind of a sensitive, where not as much of an empath as what Zach is, of course, but that she's sensitive to feelings, maybe what the sometimes what the spirit is feeling. A big one was that murder house case in Louisiana. She was always going on about feeling sick or feeling something. I don't buy into personal feelings and stuff like that as much as hardcore evidence while you're investigating. So
yeah, I'll take that any day of the week. That's what you're there for, and that's what you want to have when you're out there investigating. So the investigation does roll on. I mean, Colonel Smith takes them around the rest of the building, and the big spot for activity, it's a 4-story prison when it was in operation. Mm-hmm. And the 3rd floor was virtually where everybody had their experiences that either worked there or have been kind of like caretakers of the place since. And of course, they did end up having, they felt sick when they went to the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
They did invite in a paranormal group, and I don't think I copied the name down correctly. I wrote Southern Ghost Hunters, but I don't know what it was. Southern Ghost something.
Yeah, I forget too, but you got most of it right. But yeah, it was the only guy. It was the only guy in his team that has ever investigated that place.
And what he got was a pretty good thermal image of a human figure. And he did bring that along and show it to them.
Right.
And he had said, I think he got it in the East Wing, and they talked about whether there was a difference, East Wing, West Wing, on that 3rd floor as far as activity goes. So, they decide that there's enough activity that they're going to start on the 4th floor.
Yeah.
So they go to the 4th floor, and they ask, if you can communicate with us, can you make a noise? And it's like, down on the 3rd floor.
That was downstairs.
There's a noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, the lesson learned here is when the guy that's been there takes you on a tour and tells you the 3rd floor is the hot spot, probably you should do your investigating on the 3rd floor.
Right. At least start there. Yeah. And kind of fan out from there. Yeah.
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 So at any rate, they end up settling in on the 3rd floor, realizing that that's if they want to have some activity some evidence that they are able to gather, it's going to come from there. One of the things that was kind of interesting, and I'm sure there's probably other folks that have run across this as well, the elevator that was still functional in the building, it was one of those that you better get your butt in there. If you wanted to go with your friend and go up or down in that elevator, get your butt in there ASAP because that door's closing.
Yeah.
So they all ended up having to take individual trips because they didn't get in there quick enough with each other. But they end up first night. Nick sleeps on the where he had heard the noises out there in the hallway in the cell block area on the 3rd floor.
I think it was solitary he was in.
That's right. He was outside of solitary. I think it was the first night he was out in the hall, and then the second night he actually slept in solitary.
In solitary, yeah.
Yeah. So they did have something that happened. There were a lot of noises throughout the course of the night, that kind of sounded at times like something being thrown or whatever. And so they did have that going on over the course of the evening or the night. What little night there was, because they were so engulfed in that investigation. I think they actually tried to start to sleep about an hour before it became daylight.
Right.
So not a good thing when you're trying to get some rest. But they eventually do. One of the other areas that was kind of interesting is on that 3rd floor area, they had this, it was an open space with like a skylight, and, prisons will at times have outdoor rec areas.
Right.
But this was the rec area for the Chatham County.
Right, it was an indoor rec area, yep. We got about 10 seconds there, Dave.
Yep, yeah, I just saw that, Tyson. So we'll take a timeout and be back and finish up on Paranormal Lockdown, talk about the Dead Files 2 on News Talk 970 WBLS. And welcome back, my friend, to the show that never ends. Oh, wait. That's an old Emerson, Lake and Palmer song.
Right.
It's Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday get-together and discussion of paranormal activity, paranormal investigation, and paranormal reality TV, too. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
And we were finishing our conversation about the Paranormal Lockdown final episode for them. And by the way, you know, I did report falsely that Ghost Adventures was going to be it had new episodes. They're not new. It's just Ghost Adventures Extra Pulses. But there is a return of a show, and believe me, from a paranormal investigating standpoint, not the best show to watch, but still kind of fun to watch. Ghost Brothers, I got a kick out of it because, for me, it was just, you know, you're living vicariously through the television the lives of three guys who really aren't paranormal investigators.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of funny to see the reactions and things that go on during the course of a program with those guys. So they are coming back. They will be on TLC. And it will be, as a matter of fact, their first episode already aired.
Yes.
It aired last night, and we'll talk about it next week on Mo Valley Paranormal Live. So there will be something that immediately follows Paranormal Lockdown, and you never know. Tyson mentioned that Kindred Spirits would be coming back.
That was just announced on... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, that was just announced through TLC via Facebook and through Twitter. Adam Berry and Amy Bruni both tweeted that Kindred Spirits was coming back. They're in production right now, so I would imagine that's going to be a summer or fall release of their second season. But that was a decent show, so I'm glad that's going to be coming back.
Absolutely, yeah, it's great to see. And, you know, this gets back to, you know, kind of what was your upbringing that got into paranormal investigation? Well, their upbringing was with the best group that you could possibly have been involved with, and that's the TAPS group, which eventually became known as Ghost Hunters on the Sci-Fi Channel because of the TV show. But remember that TAPS is actually the organization of paranormal investigating. So at any rate, glad to hear they're back. Finishing up, back now on Paranormal Lockdown. You know, the Nick and Katrina figure out the third floor is the place to be, and they really start to, you know, focus in on there. We had mentioned that Nick slept in the third floor hallway just outside of the solitary confinement cell. Then the following night, he ends up sleeping in the cell.
Right.
And they did get, you know, once again, the activity was a bit sketchy in that, you know, there wasn't a lot of it. One of the things that happened was they set up a vibration sensor and that LED display that will pick up motion. And the vibration sensor did go off. And so they're, you know, they end up in the hallway there, and Rob, who's their cameraman, because at some point there are three of them there. Most of the time it's just Nick and Katrina, but Rob comes in for probably a half day, you know, 8 hours to maybe 12 with Nick and Katrina. And so they're doing the second evening investigation, and Rob says, "Did you guys hear that?" And I was like, "Hear what?" No one heard what Rob had heard.
Right, he heard a whisper.
And yeah, and so he turned to look at it, but he kept his camera on Nick Groff. As it turns out, a good thing to do, because they end up picking up a shadow figure at the end of the hallway where, Nick is standing at basically the front of it. And there at the back, there's one of those things that it's kind of crazy, but it had that appearance of something that was peeking out around the corner. It was crazy. Pretty interesting piece of video evidence.
Yeah, I would like to see that cleaned up and isolated, because the raw video, it just looks like it could have been like pixelation, or maybe the light change that the infrared or this full spectrum was picking up. I'd like to see that cleaned up and see what actually comes out of it, because I was kind of skeptical when they showed that, because this looks like...
Yeah, me too. I mean, I accepted it by the end because it was repeated to me so many times.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it's really actual evidence. Exactly. It just means that, I've had that suggested to me enough times, I kind of believe it now.
Right, because when they were at Waverly and they caught that thing they said was crawling along the floor, it was kind of like, I don't know what that is. Then when they cleaned it up, and you're like, holy smokes, that's actually someone in a nightgown crawling on the floor.
Yep.
I'd like to see that cleaned up, what it actually looks like, because what it looked like in the raw video, to me, could have just been pixelation or light change. So.
Yeah. And the other thing it reminded me of, too, it could have been, and I'm not sure what the finish on the walls was there, but if that was a plaster-type finish,
right.
It looked like the type of thing where it could have been the plaster cracked a certain way that if you look at it long enough, it's like, that's a head, those are shoulders, that's a body.
And, I want to see also, was there possibly some kind of, low light source that could have been Nick Groff's shadow? So, I mean, it just depends.
That's true.
Because it was right behind him, so.
Yep.
So you never know. I'd like to see that cleaned up, though.
Yeah. An interesting piece of evidence, to be sure. They got some other disembodied voices, got the Wonder Box out, and there was this one thing. They discovered a room that Colonel Smith did not show them on the initial tour, or at least they said, that they discovered it. Right. And it was a file room.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of the history of what had gone on inside the prison. And some of the things that may have contributed to paranormal activity there are some suicides that occurred. And they did find this one suicide file, and they were looking at it, and the person who committed suicide, his note that he wrote was, "I did it because I couldn't stand the voices no more." Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay. And that was, a testimony to the bit of a haunted nature there at the Chatham County Jail.
Well, I was watching that, Dave, and I'm like, well, you probably didn't show you that because of HIPAA laws. You probably shouldn't be in there. And it was like...
That's true. That's true.
I'm sure a lot of those people that have those files probably still have family in that county. I was like, I hope they don't drop any names or anything on that, because that might be, problematic.
Yeah. But and that's pretty much, it was not, smack you in the face obvious kind of evidence that they got over the course of their 72 hours. But they did get evidence as they were there. Kind of place you'd like to go back to. Oh, yeah. And, maybe have a different kind of approach when you go in about the way you're going to investigate. I think you could get some very interesting stuff there. Let's move on to Dead Files. Amy and Steve in Kaufman, Texas, and that's southeast of Dallas. They were contacted by this guy. His name's Larry, and as Steve is doing an interview with him, he finds out that Larry's daughter broke his leg in 3 places.
Right.
Okay, well, now that's kind of interesting. As the show goes on, you come to find out that Larry actually has a problem with alcohol. Mm-hmm. You also come to find out that, that it's such a weird situation. He's living in a mobile home beside his wife, and they're estranged. Right. And when I say beside, what is it, Tyson? Maybe 20 feet from one to the other?
It's beside.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's, a weird situation. So they continue on, and they do the investigation. Of course, my family name had to show up in this episode. A Thomas Shannon actually bought the property that was located on in 1882. So, and 3 children and his wife died there. And then he eventually passed away in 1906 at the age of 66. The one thing that was consistent at this property was how young people died in and around that property. That was the thing that struck me about this. A lot of people dying in their 50s. And then there was a murder that was somewhat close to the property of a 26-year-old teacher. And just a grisly murder. I mean, they cut her into pieces and scattered the parts of her body along the road. And Amy did see her as part of her walk, and she did see some other characters. And eventually, when they sit down to talk about it, she said, here's what you people need to do. And it's not all that much paranormal.
Right.
She said, first off, Larry, you have to go somewhere and get some rehabilitation.
I was really surprised. They both hammered him.
Yes. And then she said, she did say you need to get some mediums in because there were spirits there. The wife, Denise, her stepfather,
right.
He misses him dearly. And Amy felt that was one of the spirits that was there. And then they found out that the daughter, the one daughter, ends up being someone who can communicate with the dead. So Amy suggested, look, you've got to start, trying to pay attention to this. You do have abilities, and you've got to learn to handle them in one way, shape, or form. And, of course, the sad part is you go all the way to the end of the episode, and Amy did a very thoughtful, I thought, set of recommendations to get things back into control in that area, and they didn't do any of it. And they're still having the problems. And it's like, why'd you call? Why did you call? Oh, well. We are out of time for this week. We'll catch you again next week. Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.